Okay, today we're going to be talking about shifted parabolas. Now, shifted parabolas came from a Greek mathematician, and he used it to create shifted sonic, and basically by using these equations and examples, it figured out a way to make the cubed root of 2. So I guess it's just an easier way to figure out these problems. But an example of one of the shifted parabolas is making sure that H and K has a point. So H and K will always have a vertex when you are making your points. For example, if your point is here at 2, 3, then here would be your point. And this is where where mainly our starts of our graphs are, or where they could be, one of the ways that they could be. For an example to try and help with this, you would start out with the equation x squared minus 4x is equal to 8y minus 28. Now, this should be in your notes and you can follow along. First, you would look at the equation and you must use the complete the square method, which we've done before. So you would do x squared minus 4x. Then you would do plus the 4, because of the complete the square, is equal to 8y minus 28 plus 4, because you want it on both sides. And this is because of the complete the square. Now, for the next step, you would have to make it the perfect square. To make it the perfect square, you would have to do these two and find the perfect square of those, which would be x minus 2 squared. For after that, you would keep this side the same, except for you would do negative 28 plus 4, which would be negative 24. And then this would be your perfect square. After you've done the complete the square and the perfect square, you would have to find the shifted parabola equation. To find that, you would keep the left side of the equation the same, and then you would take out the common factor of the equation on this side, which would be 8. So then you would have y minus 3, and this would make it your shifted parabola. Okay, so using this equation, you first would use complete the square, make sure that you put the 4 on both sides, then use your perfect square equation, make sure that you only use these two numbers so that you can make x minus 2 squared, keep this side the same so that it's 8y minus 24, and then make your shifted parabola equation, which would keep the left side the same, and then use your multiple and take just 8 out of it, and then you would get y minus 3. The last step of writing the equation, you would have to put the parabola with the writing the equation with the parabola and the vertex. So by writing that, your vertex would be this number and this number. So your vertex would be 2 and 3. So to write your equation would be x squared is equal to 8y. This is your parabola equation with the origin. So this is this equation, but with the origin. Now that you have your equation and your vertex, now you're ready to graph. To start by graphing, you have to make sure that your center point is the right point, or else your graph would be off. So since our vertex is 2, 3, you would go here. This would be your vertex. And then your y point would just be 1. Yeah, your y would just be 1. And to get to this equation at the end, you have to find your foci, which you'll learn about in the next notes. But your foci would be 2, 5, which would be up here. And your foci would be your center of your point. So because of this equation, you have used completing the square, turned it into the perfect square, then a shifted parabola, and then graphed it. Now, there are some key terms in this unit, and I believe that using the vertex, finding the foci, and your shifted parabola equation, those are the 3 things that you should do first, because it is easier if you do that the first step and then graph it, and then you would find your graph already. Because if you find these points, then your graph is already done. So, yeah. Okay, now that we have talked about parabolas, there are a few key terms that can help you solve the problem. Mainly the definition of a parabola, and again, these are on your notes, so you should fill these out on your piece of paper. Applying shifts to the answer is parabolas, because every equation that you just solved, you're applying the shifts to a parabola. This leads to what we just did. We did equations and graphs. And then which key terms should you find first while starting the equation? There are 3 of them. So the first term that you should find is your equations. More specific, your parabola equations. And then you would find your foci, and then your vertex. And using these steps will help you find your equations and your graphs and the other things that you need to finish your graph.
Okay, I'm going to do a little recap of 7.3 because it gives you the basic information of a hyperbola that we need for this section. Okay, it says a hyperbola is a set of all points in a plane, the difference of whose distance from two fixed points f1 and f2 is consistent. These two fixed points are the foci of a hyperbola. So as you can see here, this is f1 and f2, and this is the equation that we're going to be using right there. So for using it for shifted hyperbolas, it gives you the example of 9x squared minus 72x minus 16y squared minus 32y equals 16. So what we're going to do first is complete the square in x and y to show that the equation represents a hyperbola. So what that means is that we're going to take 9 out of the x equation. So it'd be x squared minus 8x, leave a blank in the parenthesis, minus, and take the 16 out of this one, 2. So it's going to be this and this. So it's going to be 16 parentheses y squared minus 2y, leave a space, in parentheses, equals 16. So by doing this, we know that in these spaces, we're going to do 16 and we're going to do 1. And it's going to be plusing or adding both. So if we have to do that on both sides. So it's going to be 16 plus 9 times 16 minus 16 times 1. Okay, so if we add that all together, it's going to be 9x minus 4 squared minus 16y squared plus, oh, oopsies, erase that, 16y plus 1 squared equals 144. And then divide this by 144, which gives you x minus 4 in parentheses squared over 16 minus y plus 1 squared over 9 equals 1. So this is our shifted hyperbola equation. We're going to want to keep that. And then, yeah. Since we got the equation for a shifted hyperbola, that gives us the information that we need to continue on. The center of the hyperbola is going to be 4, negative 1, as we can see here. The 4 is going to be positive, and the negative, and the 1 is going to be negative. And the hyperbola is going to be the same shape as the unshifted hyperbola, which is going to be x squared over 16 minus y squared over 9 equals 1. Since a squared equals 16 and b squared equals 9, we're going to take the square root of each side to find a and b. So a equals 4 and b equals 3. And since we need to find c, c equals a squared plus b squared, which equals the square root of 16 plus 9 equals 5, or 16 plus 9, the square root of that equals 5. Okay, so that means 5 is the foci, and that means it's going to be 5 units to the left and to the right of the center. So the foci equals -1, -1, and 9, -1. Okay, and then the vertices are going to lie 4 units from either side of the center. So the vertices are going to equal 0, -1, and 8, -1. Okay, so that leads us to the asymptotes. The asymptotes of the unshifted parabola are, let's do this in different color as well. Let's go green. Okay, so y equals plus or minus 3 over 4x. So the asymptotes of the shifted hyperbola would be y plus 1 equals plus or minus 3 over 4 x minus 4. And if we continue this on, we get x plus 1 equals plus or minus 3 over 4 x plus or minus 3. So that would equal y equals 3 over 4x minus 4, and y equals negative 3 over 4x plus 2. So I am now going to show you, so now I'm going to show you how to do it on your graphing calculator. So we start off with the main equation, which is 16y squared plus 32y minus 9x squared plus 72x plus 16 equals 0, because we want to move everything over so it can equal 0 so we can graph it. So we're going to do quadratic formula. So y equals negative 32 plus or minus the square root of 32 squared minus 4 times 16 times negative 9 x squared plus 72x plus 16, all over 2 times 16. So if we add that all together, y equals negative 32 plus or minus the square root of 576 x squared minus 4,608x over 32, and we factor 576 from under the radical, which equals negative 32 plus or minus 24 the square root of x squared minus 8x over 32. And then we simplify, which equals negative 1 plus or minus 3 over 4 times the square root of x squared minus 8x. And then we graph the functions, and it should look a little like this. Should look a little like this. So this equals y equals -1 plus 0.75 times the radical of x squared minus 8x. And then this one equals y equals -1 minus 0.75 times the square root of x squared minus 8x. So if you graph it in your calculator from this, it should end up looking like a little bit like this. And then you're pretty much done with everything. So